Good day, everyone. Today, we are going to learn about ancient Maya civilization. From around 40,000 to 20,000 BCE, the nomadic people crossed over the land bridge between modern-day Alaska into North America in search of a warmer climate, better hunting crops, and more bountiful plant life. They settled and developed their civilization in the thick forest of modern-day Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. From around 10,000 to 8,000 BCE, spreading into what is now Guatemala, Belize, Western Honduras, and El Salvador. It stretched from the Caribbean Sea in the east to the Gulf of Mexico in the west. The historians divided the Maya civilization into three periods: pre-classic period, classic period, and post-classic period. Join me as we discuss the developments in the Mayan civilization. To begin, the pre-classic period saw the establishment of farm settlements. The thick forests in the Yucatan Peninsula provided the materials needed by the common people to build their houses. They built palm-thatched roof huts. The Maya settlements were initially governed by simple chiefdoms. They created arable land by using different methods of agriculture. They planted on raised beds above swamps. In the highland to the west, they terraced the slopes on mountainsides. In lowlands, they used slash and burn techniques to clear the forests. They started cultivating maize and abandoned a nomadic way of life. Over time, these farms were developed into permanent settlements, towns, and villages. Their villages were surrounded by cornfields or milpas. They planted maize and secondary crops such as beans, chili, peppers, cotton, cacao, squash, and tobacco. Meanwhile, maize was made into a kind of porridge called atole and was grounded into flour and made into pancakes known as tortillas. Did you know that Mayans raised turkeys, dogs, and bees for food? Meanwhile, basic items such as pottery for cooking were made in homes or in community workshops. Later on, as Maya cities began to grow, they outstripped their food production, and food trade increased. Though Mayans had no draft animals or wheeled vehicles, the load carriers brought the goods to market. As agriculture became more sophisticated and trade expanded, communities flourished and populations grew into cities. Meanwhile, most people lived in huts made out of poles and vines and plastered with mud. But the ruling class lived in huge stone palaces. Maya cities were centers of their culture. They built elaborate stepped stone pyramids, paved roads, raised causeways, wide plazas with tall stone monuments, and altars for religious sacrifices. Over time, Maya developed advanced mathematics and astronomy in 400 BC. The Maya came up with a system of numbers of base 20, unlike ours, which is of base 10. They wrote numbers using a system of bars and dots. A bar represented the number 5. Every 5 numbers, they added another bar. The number 0 was written with a symbol that looked like a shell. Around 300 BC, they began to write. The people used an advanced form of writing called hieroglyphics. They used black ink made from coal and quills made from turkey feathers in writing. They wrote on long sheets of paper made from the soft bark of fig trees or leather. These sheets were folded up like an accordion to make books. A Maya book is called a codex and used more than 800 different hieroglyphs. In addition, Maya used their number system to devise calendars. They used 20-day months and had two calendars. The 260-day sacred round or Zolkin calendar was used for religious purposes and naming children. And the 365-day vague year or Haab calendar was used for planting. These two calendars coincide every 52 years. Maya also used a separate calendar called the long count for historical purposes. Furthermore, in the late pre-classic period around 300 BC, the Maya political system began. They adopted the idea of hierarchical society. Maya society was divided between the king, priests, nobles, warriors, and merchants, artisans and peasants, and slaves. The head of all the citizens in each Mayan city was the king or halach unik. They were seen as the link between humans and gods. The king was also the supreme head of the military and was expected to fight and participate in any armed conflicts. His position is always inherited by the eldest son. Next, priests were also called ahaukan, were important because they maintained favor with the gods. Priests led rituals, offered sacrifices, and foretold the future. They also mastered the secrets of Maya calendar and wrote codices. They also served as healers. Below the priests were the nobles, warriors, and merchants. Nobles performed the administrative functions of the city-state, while warriors dealt with the defense and expansion of the territory. It should be noted that merchants had a close relationship with the elite class, sharing some privileges and customs. Next, artisans and peasants were dedicated to agriculture, construction of public works, and crafts. Among their obligations was paying taxes to civil or religious authorities. Lastly, the slaves was made up of prisoners of wars or offenders on criminals. Also, those who married slaves who were forced to perform forced labor and sacrificed in religious ceremonies became slaves. Moreover, the lives of the ancient Maya centered around the religion and gods of nature. Mayans believed that pleasing the gods would lead to long lives, good fortune, and plentiful harvests. Mayans worshipped many nature gods like sun, moon, rain, corn, and others. Meanwhile, the sun god Kinich Ahau was one of the most important gods of the Maya. Having cross-eyed was considered honoring Kinich Ahau, the cross-eyed Maya sun god, in order to appease and gain his favor. Meanwhile, Maya mothers would suspend an object between the eyes of their infants in an attempt to artificially induce the desired cross-eyed trait. In addition, the Maya also worshipped Yumtaax, the maize god, and to this god they look for their idea of beauty. As an ear of corn narrows up the top, the Maya found an elongated head attractive. In a process called trepanning, the Maya used wooden boards to elongate infants' heads. It was in hopes their child would be handsome, favored, and have a good future. Meanwhile, the Maya believed their rulers could communicate with their gods and their dead ancestors by human sacrifice. They believed the gods were nourished by human blood and would help solve problems in civilization and prevent drought, chaos, and disorders. Different methods were used for human sacrifice, including disembowelment, cutting out of the heart, killing with bow and arrows, and others. The sacrifice was performed by the priests and usually took place on top of the temple pyramids. The Maya kings and queens would also often have to conduct bloodletting rituals. The blood from the bloodletting was collected on cloth knots or strips of white paper. It was placed in censers, burnt with copal as an offering to the gods. Meanwhile, the classic period is considered the golden age of the Maya city-states. At around 400 AD, the Mayan erected hundreds of great cities in the rainforests of Mesoamerica, including Tikal, Calakmul, Palenque, and Copan. Also, each city was a home to the local king who lived in a palace within the city. Furthermore, in 500 AD, the Maya city of Tikal became the first great Maya city. The classic period is also defined by the appearance and use of dated stone slabs known as stelae. These were large upright stone monuments that commemorate political, social, and religious events of Maya culture using long count calendar. The classic period was also home to large pyramids that served as temples of their gods. They built two kinds of pyramids. The first type of pyramid had a temple on the top and was meant to be climbed by the priests to make sacrifices to the gods and used for important religious ceremonies. Meanwhile, the second type of pyramid was a sacred pyramid built for gods. These pyramids were not to be climbed or touched by humans. Common features of Maya cities were large stone courts that are used to play the ball game called tok-a-tok. The point of the game was to work with a team to get a rubber ball through a small hoop. The ball game was used as a way to settle conflicts. It was also part of religious ceremony wherein losers were killed and sacrificed to the gods. Furthermore, by around 800 AD, the Mayans began to abandon and leave their cities, and civilization began to decline. The fall was slowly and gradual. No one was really sure what happened, perhaps due to invasions, overclearing of the forests, diseases, and others. Furthermore, the post-classic period from 900 AD to 1500 AD marked by a huge transformation of Maya culture. The major population centers shifted from the central lowlands and the rainforests to the drier coastal regions of the northern Yucatan. The Maya of this period focused on trade and commerce. Meanwhile, post-classical trade during this period included cotton, cloth, textiles, salt, honey, wax, enslaved people, cacao, precious metals, and Macau feathers. In addition, different Maya cities gained importance in post-classic period like Chichen Itza, Uxmal, and Mayapan. Also, Yucatan created new challenges for the Maya. The Maya who lived in the drier climate of the Yucatan learned how to tap into underground water sources called cenotes. Meanwhile, in the late post-classic period, women played an enormous role in the Maya economy, particularly in spinning, weaving, and manta production. Lastly, with the arrival of the Spanish in the mid-16th century, the Maya civilization neared its end. The Spanish began their conquest of Maya in 1527, but it took them 170 years to finish the process. The conquest proved disastrous. By 1697, the civilization of Maya fell, finally lost to history. That's all about ancient Maya civilization.